whole reason that the United States headquarters exists on prime real estate there in Manhattan, and I drive by it every time I'm on my way to the airport to get back to the rest of the actual America. The only reason that they're able to have the force that they have, to have the funding that they have, to have the real estate that they have, is that the United States goes along with this make-believe thing that the United Nations is somewhat helpful. The United Nations is, I mean, when you have countries that have horrible human rights abuses that are on human rights councils, when you have the United Nations where they're voting against the sovereignty of a particular entity because they're a bunch of anti-Semitic bigots, this is a real problem. The United States should reconsider its funding with the United Nations. Honestly, what does the United Nations actually accomplish? What sanctions, after all the sanctions that have been completely useless, like in Iraq and elsewhere? I understand the concept. I understand you need a place where countries can come together and when they can talk and when they can discuss. But honestly, this has been abused to the nth degree by countries who want to basically do this on the back of the United States, and while also flying a one-finger salute in the face of the United States on United States soil. And I know that people would pick apart, well, it's, technically because of the treaty that's considered international soil. Let's live in reality. It's prime real estate in Manhattan. That's United States soil. Nikki Haley is right. And for the United Nations to do this, considering that the United Nations exists at the generosity of the United States, is a joke. The United Nations is a joke.
Yeah, and John Brennan, the former CIA director for Barack Obama, came out and he talked about sovereignty, and he said this is about sovereignty for the countries that voted against the United States. He makes no mention of the sovereignty of both the United States and Israel. The two people involved in this deal that really doesn't affect anybody else. They should be allowed to do what they want to do without the United Nations getting in the way.
The United States can declare Jerusalem to be the capital of Israel without regard for our neighbors. We can do that, considering that whenever our neighbors are in trouble, who do they call? They call the United States, while also complaining that the United States gets involved in everything at the request of all of these other countries who demand our funding and support. So, yeah, it's silly. It's silly to think this. Look, this is reality, and this is nothing that any other president hasn't done. Even Barack Obama in 2008, although later he started to walk it back, acknowledged that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. This is no longer up for debate. It hasn't been up for debate. This is the reality in which we live in. And people can sit here and proclaim days of rage. I thought your religion was peaceful. You can sit here and claim days of rage, et cetera, et cetera. That's not going to alter reality. Jerusalem is the capital. And if the United Nations doesn't want to acknowledge that, we don't have to acknowledge them with funding.
Yeah.